What's up, y'all? Motorman here. Today we're going to put an engine in a 2015 Scion FRS. So here it is, 2015 Scion FRS. This is the same body and powertrain as a Subaru BRZ. The only difference is the interior trim and the electronics are made by Toyota, but this is a Subaru non-turbo 2.0 liter. So this thing had it was in a wreck, and the engine jumped time and the pistons hit the valves and the valves went through the valve cover. Here's a piece of the valve cover that fell off. There's broken valve covers on both sides, and here's a rocker arm that fell out. And if you know anything about rocker arms, they ain't supposed to fall out. There you go. Here's our replacement engine here. As you can see on the top, it says Toyota Subaru, just like Chevy Ford. So kind of some funny stuff there. And this is a horizontally opposed, I guess they call it a W4. It's not like a V because it's, you know, horizontally opposed, but it's got dual variable valve timing on the intake and exhaust cams on both sides, both banks. And it has, instead of an engine block, it's like a motorcycle engine. It's got two aluminum cases on both sides that bolt around the crankshaft, and here's an aluminum timing cover with our timing chains and tensioners and everything. And so first thing to do is strip this engine down. We're going to take the intake off and all our components and unbolt the exhaust on the bottom, and just get this block ready to separate it from the transmission and hoist it on out. Let's do it. Alright, so we've got our intake off, alternator, air conditioning disassembled, and you're going to need the 5/16 fuel line disconnector to get the these fuel lines disconnected when you take that off. But for the most part, the engine harness stays on the block, and you just get it disconnected to where it all stays on the block while you take the block out, and everything else that's connected to the transmission and the body stays. So the next thing, we got to get it underneath it. And we're going to disconnect our exhaust manifold from both sides. Our engine mounts. And the Y pipe. And then the super fun task of unbolting all the bolts out of the transmission to the engine cases. And our starter. Got some lovely spiders living down here. Car's been sitting for a little bit. Alright, so we are hoisting our engine out of here. And you can see where the valve covers were broken, where the and that part's missing right there. Shouldn't have that huge hole in there. That's where the rocker arm fell out. That's what it looks like on its way out. And this one's got a straight up hole in it right there. Not good. There's a little crack spot where it punched out from the inside. So, not good. I'll pull those covers off in a minute and we'll take a deeper look. Here's our clutch. Here's our main shaft on the transmission and the pilot bearing down there, and there's our exhaust manifolds, and let's put this thing down. Alright, so we've got this engine out. We're looking at our pilot bearing. This is how your clutch works. Boop. Rides out, pushes that clutch spring in. You want to check these bearings while you got them out. And you want to put as much new stuff in as possible. Just depends on how much they want to spend. So here's our engine block, and we're gonna, just like we stripped that one, we're gonna strip this one. We're gonna take everything from the car and put it on this one after we get the block back in. So there you have it. Alright, so we've got our engine harness stripped off of the our blown up engine block, and there's our hole in the valve cover, and some of this stuff, it's hard to tell, you know, with used parts. You just gotta pick the better of, if you got parts going from one used engine to the other, whatever looks like it's gonna be the best. If you're getting new parts, it's a different story, but it is what it is. So we've got our engine harness transferred over, and everything run where it's supposed to go, and there's our old stuff over there. And we're gonna slap this puppy back in there and fire it up. Alright, so we got our motor back in, and the tricky part is getting the main shaft of the transmission splined into the splines of the clutch, as if it's not at exactly the right angle, it ain't gonna go in. So I use, it's hanging on this chain, and I use ratchet straps to pitch the motor back and forth, or however you got to do it to get that thing lined up back there. And then you just kind of fight it until it finally gives in and lines up. And as soon as you can get a bolt started, the better. So the transmission is on a floor jack and some wood blocks to raise it up high enough to line the engine up. And I got my engine pitched just right to line up the clutch, and I got a bolt started. So we're gonna put the starter back in and bolt up the transmission, and then lower it back down onto the frame, because right now it's still hanging. The engine and the transmission are still hanging. And then put our exhaust on and everything else. Alright y'all, we got this motor back in. We got all our covers on, our belts on, and our harness all back snapped into place where it's supposed to go. Alternator, AC back together, and this car had backfired through the intake, and it melted the air filter, so we got to get a new air filter for it. And there's still a hole through the condenser and the radiator, so I'm not going to start it for you, so deal with it. Here's our old engine block. You can see rocker arms and valve spring keepers. That's a piece of a broken rocker arm. And it's a mess inside here. There's a valve spring just laying all willy-nilly. It's like that on both sides. Our broken valve cover. Some more rocker arms. Just punch the valves right out. There you have it, folks. 2015 FRS engine swap. Bam.